Zack Wiki is a pirate puzzle adventure game released by Capcom in 2007 that revolves around the use of the Wii's motion controls. You explore jungles, volcanoes, and castles as you solve puzzles and uncover treasure. While praised by critics, the game flew under the radar and it faded into obscurity. But those who did play the game didn't forget it, and some of those people decided to push the game to its limits. Our story starts in August 2019 when Mills Miles created a page for Zack Wiki on speedrun.com with the help of Hydrus, another speedrunner. Mills did the first any percent run of the game. It wasn't the most mind-blowing run, but what it accomplished was far more important than the time at the end of the run. On February 21st, 2020, Bowser Jr. XD submitted the second any percent run to speedrun.com. And on the 4th of August 2020, I discovered the speedrun.com page, and on November 5th, 2020, I submitted my first run, a 143 3 Colossi individual level run. Individual level runs, or ILs, are runs where you speedrun a specific level of the game rather than the whole game, and this is what we're going to focus on in this video. As I began running each level to prepare for my own any percent run, I tried to establish contact with Alex Penev. Alex Penev, best known for his Mario Kart speedruns, had run Zack Wiki back in 2008, shortly after the game was released. He had all of his times listed on Speed Demos Archive, an old website where speedrunners would report their best times. Sadly, Penev only took videos of 4 of these runs. Most of them were better than our times, so we were curious if he could remember any of the strategies they had used in those runs. A few days after I started running the game, I was able to talk to the Summoning Salt, who gave me a link to Penev's Reddit account. Bowser Jr. sent him a message, but to our disappointment, he didn't remember any specifics about his runs. However, he did direct us to an old leaderboard on Cyberscore. To our shock, on Cyberscore there was one Austrian runner named Imprisioned who had got every single record except for one back in 2017. Some of these runs were so good that we questioned the validity of the runs because there was no video proof for any of them. At first we ignored Cyberscore and tried to beat all of Alex Penev's times instead. However, knowing what we do now, I think it's pretty safe to say that all of Imprisioned's times are completely legitimate. Now let's talk a little bit more about these times. While some of them are very good, some of them were not so good. 7 of Imprisioned's times were actually slower than the record set by Alex Penev back in 2008. Those being the Fountain Guardian, Lake of Fire, Relics of the Past, Dragon Scales, Ancient Worm, Mad Science, and Keeper of the Ice. In addition, Imprisioned's any percent run was beaten by Mills Miles' original run, and Bowser Jr. already had a Mad Science run that was better than both Penev and Imprisioned's runs. As we continued to do more runs, we slowly improved at the game and gradually began to beat both of their times.
.453, all right. That hurt my arm. 741. .345, all right. Mirror is 524. It's an annoying telephone.
Nice. $536. Oh, I don't know how much really I can even do that. Okay, this better be record. I thought it would take a whole lot more grinding to... 241. Yes. Wow, nice. 223. There's only like 2 different ways that it ever bounces. Whoa! I did not expect that. Okay.
Sit there. Tell me. 819. All right, sweet.
All right, this one's so 345. All right, I'm pretty happy. Okay, nice. Gotta grab to the bomb. That wasn't the best. I don't know why 5 would be really perfect. 204? Oh, man, that was kind of stubborn. Whoa. Oh, wow. Okay. Let's see. 317 is the time to beat. Oh, what? Alright, this was good. I really like this run. Whoa, 611. Skipping that cutscene is kind of hard because you gotta shake. 228? Alright. Runs have always been in question, but I'm starting to think they're real. Alright, wow, that times it, or ties it. If you want to get good at this. Yeah, nice. Excellent. That's a cool movement trick I discovered a little while ago, and it saves quite a bit of time. 3 colossi now, though. 3:22, 8 seconds. Wow, yeah, that was just a really good run.
Whoa, okay, 603. Okay then. Oh, yes, 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 yes!
6 left. After about a month, only the most optimized runs remain. 117 A Journey Begins, 120 Pit of Tragedy, 133 Colossi, 347 The Painted Secret, 741 Return of the Legend, and 917 Barbaros Land, all held by Imprisioned. What most of these levels have in common is that they are short, or at least in the case of Return of the Legend, they don't have very many moments where you need to go fast. Because these levels are so short, people, like Imprisioned, can do much more attempts in the same amount of time, which generally leads to much more optimized runs. These factors combine to make some truly formidable times, difficult to match, harder to beat. As I alluded to before, Return of the Legend may be long, but it is unique because most of the time you're just waiting. So when how fast you go does matter, you have to make the most of it. To top all of this off, at the very end of the run, there is an element of RNG. While you are riding down the minecart track, you need to exorcise 10 small ghosts before killing the big ghost. They come in groups of 1, 2, or 3. Optimally, you get 10 ghosts in 4 cycles. In our experience, it's about a 50-50 chance to get optimal patterns. Because of its combination of length, demand for excellent execution, and RNG, Return of the Legend is one of the most difficult and frustrating levels in the game. Bowser Jr. XD tied Imprisioned 741 with what we regarded as a pretty solid run, so we had never really considered trying to beat it. But now that we were so close to beating all of Imprisoned's times, I decided to give the level another look. Towards the beginning of the level, the main Iron Maiden SD-3A sends out 4 ghost pirates, and Zack needs to pull this lever to open the hatch on the roof to kill the ghosts. In the past, I had tried pulling the lever before the ghosts were released to kill them faster, but because you can't skip the cutscene where the ghosts are released, you need to pull the lever again in order to kill the last ghost. But since the last time I had tried this, my execution had improved. I tried this again and discovered that if you were fast enough at pulling the lever the second time, you wouldn't lose any time at killing the ghosts, and you would kill 2 ghosts at the same time. This actually saves a couple seconds, but the drawback is that you need to be almost perfect when you pull the lever the second time. You can't waste any time at all, or else you'll miss the cycle and you'll have to wait for the ghost to travel all the way around the room again. But eventually, I was able to use this trick to beat Imprisoned and Bowser Jr.'s 741 with a 735, bringing Imprisoned's remaining records down to 5. Next is Barbaros Land. Barbaros Land is the opposite of Pit, 3 Colossi, and A Journey Begins. It's the biggest and most complex level in the game. There are 11 different items and 6 separate cycles to worry about, more than any other level in the game. The order in which you do everything is completely flexible, so this level is also the least linear. For most of the level's history, each runner didn't even use the same route. So to understand this level a little better, I'm going to have to go into a bit more detail about how the level works. The main thing we have to worry about when routing this level are the cycles. There are 6 cycles in this level, which is a lot, but the main 3 we have to worry about are the patrol goons. There are 3 patrol goons. One is the prison goon, which goes along this level here, back and forth. The next one goes up this ladder, on the ground, on the wall, and loops around here like this. And the other one does a similar thing down here, where he goes on the ground, gets on the wall, goes down, gets off, gets back on, and then goes back and loops around like that. The other 3 cycles are the wind here, this eyeball which looks at different directions, which we're not really going to worry about, and the elevator, where about every 30 seconds a goon will send it from the bottom floor to the middle floor, then to the top floor, and then up. Zack starts this level in the prison cell. The only place for him to go is down here, where he can either catch the elevator here, or travel to this part of the level, but we're not going to worry about that because it is never fast. And this is where we face the first major decision of this run, which is going to separate a few of the different routes we've had over the year. I like to split this level into 2 parts. There's this part up here with the prison, and then there's the rest of the level. And there are 2 items from this prison level that you need to take to the other side of the level through this bridge. And the only way back is up the elevator, which involves waiting and cycles and stuff, so we try to avoid it as much as possible. And we only want to do it once. And so the 2 items here are the pole and the lighter, which are here. You need the lighter to light this torch in order to scare this frog, which you need to do to beat the level. And you need the pole to travel across this rope and get the treasure bell, which you need to put here before the end of the level. The other things you need to do in the level is throw this rock down and then pick up a pebble that will appear down here. And then you need to take that up here and drop it on this snake, which you have to wake up before you do that. You also need to get the sword that's here and use it to sword fight the goon down here and cut this rope here before you can use the pole here. As you can see, this level has a lot going on. Until January 8th, 2021, the world record was Bowser Jr.'s 1046. In this run, he deactivated the eye right away with the gold flakes, and then did as much as possible on the right side of the level before getting the pole and placing the treasure bell. Here's an easy to read diagram of the route to help you better visualize it. This run wasn't very good, but a minute and a half was still an insane amount of time to save. It was clear that we needed a new route, but we weren't sure how we could improve the route beyond a few small changes. Luckily, Night Phantom came along with a completely new set of eyes on the level, and he developed a new route. He used this route to get a 1001, quickly followed by a 957. In this run, he didn't kill the top goon, didn't deactivate the eye until he grabbed the pole much later in the level, and optimized movement in the rest of the level. Here's an easy to read diagram of the route to help you better visualize it. The next day, Bowser Jr. used this new route with a few changes to get a 937. He lit the torch earlier and did the gondola fast instead of slow. He also bumped into the top goon accidentally and had to sword fight him. Here's an easy to read diagram of the route to help you better visualize it. To 2 days after Bowser Jr.'s 937, Night Phantom grinded some attempts and finally got the run we had been waiting for. He used the same route as Bowser Jr., but he managed to avoid a fight with the top patrol goon. This, combined with some good execution, helped him achieve a 9:15. In just a few days, the world record had dropped by over a minute and a half, and now we only had 4 imprisoned times left. After we finally beat Imprisioned's Barbaros Land, I decided to look at one of my personal favorites, the Painted Secret. The Painted Secret was the first level that I ever tried to grind to perfection. When we first discovered Imprisoned's times, my Painted Secret was 4:06, and that was one of the 2 world records that I held at the time, so I considered myself an expert on it. So when I saw that Imprisoned had reported a 3:47, I decided that it was impossible to achieve, thus it must be fake. After all, who could achieve a time a whole 19 seconds faster than my near-perfect run? Well, the next day, Bowser Jr. beat my run by 17 seconds, in less than 10 minutes of grinding. In hindsight, we were pretty naive to think that Imprisoned's runs were fake, considering that we had only been doing ALs for a few days at that point. Luckily for me, I had gotten a lot better in 2 months. I started by taking a look at the route. The level is pretty linear, except at the very beginning. At the very beginning, you need to remove this painting from its pedestal and put the other picture with the key in it in the first painting's place. There's also a piece of the chest in between the 2 paintings. The main problem with this is that when you pick up one item, you automatically drop whatever you're holding. So you can't put the key painting on the pedestal without first taking the first painting off. In Bowser Jr.'s world record, he just picked up the key painting, picked up the other painting, and then picked up the key painting again and put it on the pedestal. After some experimenting, I decided to start with the empty painting, then grab the chest piece, and then grab the key painting, causing me to drop the chest piece, and then put the key painting on the pedestal. The main advantage of this route was that the chest piece could end up on the ground right next to where you needed to put it later. But with this new strategy and better execution, mainly in movement and blinding the painting man, I was able to crush Imprisoned's 3:47 with a 3:42. Okay, only 3 left. Surely they will be as easy to beat as the Painted Secret, right? Well, his last 3 runs are 1:17 A Journey Begins, 1:20 Pit of Tragedy, and 1:33 Colossi. Me and Bowser Jr. had both tied his journey. Me, Bowser Jr., and Night Phantom had all tied his pit. And me, Bowser Jr., and Definitely Not Solid Snake had all achieved a 1:32 3 Colossi. Well, okay, all we need to do is shave a couple seconds off each of those, and we're good, right? Well, remember what I said earlier about short levels and why they are more difficult to improve? Well, these are the 3 shortest levels in the game, and all of our times were achieved as a direct result of us trying to beat Imprisoned's runs. It seems like Imprisoned grinded these levels a lot. And we didn't just want to tie them, we wanted to beat them. But we were worried that his times were humanly impossible to beat, especially the 1:33 Colossi. Well, shortly after we beat his Barbaros Land run, I decided it was time to figure out exactly how fast those levels could be beaten. So I decided to create a TAS. A TAS is a tool-assisted speedrun. Basically, you use an emulator, like Dolphin in this case, to play the game frame by frame and use other tools like save states to create a theoretically perfect run. The first one I did was of Pit of Tragedy, and I got a blazing fast 1:17. Sadly, because of some bugs in Dolphin, this is the only one that actually has a video to go along with it. Of course, this didn't mean that we could beat the level this fast, but it did mean that there was probably enough wiggle room to get a 1:19. But 2 seconds slower than a computer is still super fast. But at least this was hope. After doing a TAS of Crystal Key, I decided to do A Journey Begins. This level has so much button mashing that a TAS must be absolutely insane. I can't wait to see what kind of crazy time that a TAS can achieve. Well, at the end of my TAS, I got a blazing fast 1:18. What? Well, one of the things that makes TASing difficult is that you can't always see what you're doing in real time until you actually finish. And like I said earlier, I couldn't actually do that because of some bugs. In hindsight, I'm guessing that when I saw down the tree towards the end of the level, I did it really slow, but I didn't realize it because I was going frame by frame. After that, I just decided to move on to 3 Colossi. This time I did it right, and the timer at the end of the task was 1:27. Once again, it was shockingly close to Imprisioned's run. Well, now that we know how fast most of these levels could go theoretically, it was time to see how far we could push it using only a fleshy human. The Journey Begins acts as the tutorial for the game, so it's a little different from the other levels. Speedrun mostly involves skipping cutscenes and mashing through dialogue as fast as you can. This doesn't mean it's easy. Because there are so many cutscenes, you rarely know where your pointer is, so memorizing how to position your remote is essential. And when misclicking can end a run, you really need to know where to click. Trust me, this is much harder than it sounds. The worst part is dropping the umbrella at the end of the second segment of the level. You need to click on the item in this small circle and drag it out of the circle. But if you click too early, it won't work and you'll have to reset. But the main thing that makes this level special is how resetting works. Because it's the tutorial level, whenever you pause and select Restart from the beginning, instead of placing you at the very beginning like any other level, it puts you at the beginning of whatever segment you are on. For example, if you restart here, Zack will be hanging in the tree instead of standing in the plane. Because having to return to the hideout every attempt that got past the very beginning would make running the level a huge pain, we decided to make an exception to the rules. This essentially makes this a segmented run. This makes it much easier to do runs, but it also makes it easier to optimize them and get them as close to perfection as possible. For example, towards the end of the run, you need to saw down a tree. This is fairly inconsistent, so in a normal run, you could normally just be content with a saw that paused every once in a while. But with the new rules, you could reset until you got a perfect one. On January 15th, I discovered that instead of sawing with a back and forth motion like the game directs, it's more consistent to go up and down, only angling slightly towards the sensor bar. With this new strategy, I was able to get a 1:15 in a 30-minute session of playing the same short parts of the level over and over until it was basically perfect. The same day, Bowser Jr. got his own 1:15. Only 2 left. The next level is probably the most iconic. Pit of Tragedy. This is the first traditional level in the game, and so it's the most simple. All you need to do is walk to the top right of the level, pick up this pot, transform the snake, pick up the slither gripper, get the key, unlock the door, get the slither gripper once again to pull this lever, and get the treasure. The fact that this level is very simple and short means that it's destined to be the most optimized. The world record for this level has always demanded a level of perfection that no other level does. In fact, this world record has dropped by less than 10 seconds over the course of our history. The only notable strategy is, right after you transform the snake, you have to wait a little bit less than a second before you can pick up the slither gripper. You can use this small window of time to edge a little bit closer to the pillar. This barely saves any time, and it's pretty difficult, but when the runs are this optimized, that's what needs to be done to push the level to its limits. We had a 3-way tie of 120 on Pit, and me and Bowser Jr. didn't really feel like playing Pit over and over again to get a 119, but Night Phantom really doesn't like sharing world records with other people. So on January 20th, or the 21st for him in Australia, he started to grind some attempts and returned with the first 119. Of course, we couldn't let Night Phantom have that all by himself, so we quickly started grinding for our own 119 the next day. Bowser Jr. got a 119 for himself very quickly, but before he could celebrate, Night Phantom got the first 118. Luckily for me, I was able to get my own 118 that same day, and a few days later, Bowser Jr. got his. And that is where the world record stands today. Only one left, 3 Colossi. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, the first run that I submitted to the Zack Wiki leaderboard was my 143 3 Colossi, and now it was the last level we had left to conquer in order to prove that we were the best Zack Wiki speedrunning community of all time. The problem is that 3 Colossi is a beast of a level. It seems pretty innocent at first, but don't be fooled, it's the perfect storm. It's short, has tiny things you need to click on right out of cutscenes. Turning the crank sometimes just stops if you don't do it at the right rhythm. The stairs up to the chest are really awkward, so it's really easy to mess up your movement at the very end when you know you're on a good pace. And of course, the snake. At the very beginning you need to stack these parts of the snake totem pole in this orientation. The problem is that they are sprawled out in a random order, and there's always at least one that is upside down. and aiming the Wiimote while holding it upside down is a nightmare. After a while, your wrist starts to hurt, so in a way, grinding this level has a time limit. But this was the last one, so we all started to do runs. The first person to get a 131 was definitely not Solid Snake on January 19th. At this point, he was brand new, so I was pretty shocked when he got this time, but sadly he forgot to record. The next day, Night Phantom matched his 131, and later that day, definitely not Solid Snake got the first 130. But once again, he wasn't recording. Sadly, his time on the leaderboard is still a 132, a cautionary tale on why you should always record your attempts. The next day, I got my own 130, and then Bowser Jr. got a 131. We were so close. Bowser Jr. and I had been competing for months, taking each other's records back and forth. Who would defeat Imprisoned once and for all and cement themselves in Zack and Wiki Speedrunning history forever as the one who finally defeated Imprisoned? Later that same fateful day, someone posted a screenshot in the Discord. 129! And the person who performed it, of course, was none other than Night Phantom. Seriously, he's been here for like a week, what the heck? Well, to his credit, none of us have matched his 129 since, and frankly, considering how little he's played compared to me and Bowser Jr., some of his world records are insane, especially this one. I'm actually writing this like an hour after he took the any % record for the first time. It took us a little over a month to beat 3/4 of Imprisoned's times, and then another month to beat his 6 best times. When I look back, I'm really glad Imprisoned ran this game back in 2017. I never realized how great it was to have something to work towards until it was gone. It's just not the same anymore. Maybe one day he'll come back and run the game once again. That would be pretty cool. Oh no. Wow, finally done. This video took almost a year to make, and I couldn't have done it without so many of you. Huge thanks to everybody in the Zack and Wiki community for making this whole story happen, and I'm so glad I could be a part of it. A very special thanks to Night Phantom and Bowser Jr., who helped me get a lot of the footage for these runs, and really just helped me a lot with the creative process. And of course, thanks to all my other friends who helped me edit the video and gave suggestions and helped edit the script and all that stuff. And of course I need to thank Summoning Salt, whose videos inspired me to speedrun in the first place, and of course whose videos inspired this video. And of course thank you for watching this video. Considering how much work it took to put this video together, I'm just really glad that you were there to watch it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in 2 years.